This is Support is Sexy, episode 310, with artist, author, and designer Maggie Minor. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you because it just would not be the same without you. And today we are welcoming artist, author, and designer Maggie Minor. And I'm excited about talking to Maggie because she talks about something that we often forget, our space. Think about, in fact, if you're in your office right now or wherever your workspace is, look around right now. Do you have all of the things that you need in your space? Do you have all of the things that you want in your space? Do you have all of the things that make you happy in your space? Or are you like me, at least in this moment, and have piles of things to do in your space? I have my favorite mug here, of course, my equipment. Other things are really just things to do. Do you have the most beautiful space that you can, or more importantly, a space that supports you as a person, as a woman, and as a woman entrepreneur? So that's what we talked to Maggie about today. This is her specialty, designing workspaces for women entrepreneurs. So what Maggie shares with us is how to create your ideal workspace, also the do's and don'ts of designing your workspace, how color and art play a role in your space, the importance of flow. I'm sure you've heard people talk about flow before, so we go into that. How your vision for your business aligns with your space, and be aware of what may be holding you back in your space. So are there things, objects, visuals, things in your space that might be holding you back? Some things, for example, that might be supporting some limiting belief that you have that you might not even be conscious of until you take a real inventory of your space. And Maggie shares a story in here about something unexpected that was holding her back, actually in her home, which of course is a part of her space. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. Without further ado, Maggie Minor. So Maggie, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited that you invited me.
Of course. Now, first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
It was actually when I was 7 years old, or like 6 or 7, because my parents owned a construction company, and my mom was the lead contractor. So I kind of always grew up around entrepreneurship. So it was really fun for me because during the summers she would let me ride with her to run if she had a day where she was running errands. Mm-hmm. So I would be with her to go pick out tiles and buy lumber and have lunch with all of her other contractor friends. And so for me, it was a really big adventure. So I always thought I'd be an entrepreneur.
Was it because you saw that example of that in your mom?
I think so. Now that I've been reflecting back as an adult, I mean, even when I was like 13, I took it was a vocational course, and they had us write up our future and make a little book out of it. Mm-hmm. And I had myself running my own company, and I was actually building houses on the moon.
You were building houses on the moon?
I was, yeah. And because I created like the solar panel that could allow that to happen. Uh-huh. And the woman who was running the class loved it so much she sent it to all the other teachers. But yeah, so it's a big part of who I am as a person. I have a very independent spirit.
Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Durham, North Carolina.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I went to school with, I'm from a super old Southern family, but it was an interesting kind of juxtaposition because Duke University is in Durham. So I was around a bunch of the Duke professor kids. So I had friends from all over the world. So it was an interesting background, way to grow up.
What was a young Maggie like growing up in Durham, aside from, building houses on the moon?
I was pretty introspective. I'm an introvert. I really love people, so I was very interested in my friends, but kind of my spare time was really spent, like exploring the neighborhood on my bike with my dog, or in my room doing something creative.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have. It gets a little complicated. I have. I have an older brother. He's 2.5 years older than me. He is an investment banker, but then when my parents got divorced when I was 8, and my dad remarried a woman with a really young son, and so we ended up being raised together, and so I consider him my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love it. Now, who would you say were some of your greatest influences growing up?
Well, my mom, obviously, being a contractor, she was a woman contractor. I mean, it's still not commonplace.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually been on planes. I was on a plane once, and this guy asked me, I don't know, we were just talking, and he said, "Oh, well, what does your mom do?" And I said, "She's a contractor." And he just looked at me like I said that, she was a Martian. But her having kind of being daring enough to do that, being in a male-dominated world had a big influence on me. It made me realize that there would be challenges, but there really wasn't anything that was off limits.
Right.
And I think also she's pretty like 0 to 60, in like 1.2 seconds. So, she never she always treated me as an adult. So everything that had to do with the business, she taught me. So when I'm 8 years old and she's teaching me about, financing a house, or, drafting. So by the time I was 10 years old, I knew how to draft draw out the designs of houses like a draftsman.
Now, you said you always knew that you'd be an entrepreneur, I guess work for yourself, even if you didn't know the language at that time of being an entrepreneur. What did you have an idea of what you thought you'd want to do or be?
Yeah, I actually thought I would be an architect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the only reason that didn't happen was just because of circumstance. I didn't get into the college that I wanted to get into that had the architectural program. So I ended up at a school at UNC Chapel Hill. It was still a really good school, but I ended up kind of going more into the liberal arts, which kind of filtered me to art history, which is kind of what brought me to where I am now. And in retrospect, I don't think that I would have been happy as an architect because it's too structural.
It's funny. I was going to ask you that. Do you think you would have been happy as an architect?
No. Yeah, I think I would have felt too confined.
You never know why things happen the way they do, right?
Yeah, but I'm a firm believer that they happen in your best interest.
So you studied liberal arts then when you went to college?
Mm-hmm. Yes, art history and history. I'm a history buff.
Okay, and then after college, you traveled for 15 years, right?
Well, it wasn't all 15 years, but I've lived in 4 countries and I've been to over 30. And I did it in a lot of different ways. So I was a graduate student. I have a degree in international studies with a focus on democratization and globalization. And then I was in Australia for that. And then I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Bulgaria. And then I worked in England. And then I was a humanitarian worker that was based in the United States, but I traveled fairly often. And then I traveled on my own as well, just because you meet so many different people from all over the world. So traveling was a huge part of my life for many, many years.
How would you say that traveling or that experience from living so many different places and having those different experiences has shaped who you are today?
It's such a I actually wrote a whole book about this. So for me to put it into
Tell us.
But I guess the biggest thing was that it gave me a huge appreciation for diversity in the world. I had been living in I I've been living this very international life. And then for the last 5 years, I've lived I just moved away, but I just came from living in a small town in North Carolina. And I realized how different my world was than how the average American's life was. And I realized how exactly your question, like how it shaped me. And it was that I've become very interested in different perspectives. Because when you look at the world in a different perspective, it allows you to see so many more possibilities for your own life and for the world in general. And so I think traveling and living in different cultures, although it can be hard, it leaves you with this huge spark of hope. Mm-hmm. Because at the heart, when you meet all these different people and, the good, and you meet people who are, you essentially learn that the same thing drives everyone. And in a lot of ways, it simplifies your life because you don't see things as black and white. You just kind of see everyone as part of your tribe.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that it's so interesting because I feel like so much of the misunderstandings in our world today are because people don't get to know each other or sort of put themselves in someone else's shoes, even if you can't, if you don't go live necessarily in another country, but it's sort of this lack of, for lack of a better word, I say compassion for your fellow man or woman and person and their experiences and what they bring from their walk of life to what you bring to your walk of life. So I think for you, it sounds like just being able to experience all that and befriend people from all walks of life was life-changing.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
Yeah. And your book is Adventures of a Curious Sculptor, right?
Yes.
Yes. What you wrote, was it just late last year?
Yeah, I wrote it this time last year.
Nice. Very nice. So what would you say then that you, was there one thing that you learned from your journey that continues to have a really strong impact on you today, learned from your adventures?
To always be looking for the interesting things, like to always stay curious. Mm-hmm. That's it. Being curious is what makes me feel alive. And I think that's probably true for most people.
Now, how did you evolve into becoming a sculptor?
So my aunt was a painter. And my grandmother, who died before I was born, was also a painter. So I grew up around art. And so I started painting when I was 15. But then, and I continued painting, but when I came back from the Peace Corps, I was 29, and I wanted to go back into exploring, my artistic endeavors, essentially. But I felt like painting was, it's two-dimensional. Like you can't, there's just I'm a very tactile person. Like I really appreciate the way things feel. And so feel to the touch. So I wanted to do something three-dimensional, and I tried a bunch of different mediums, and I actually started working with clay, and then I left it, and then I went back, and then I left again, and then I went back.
It kept calling you back.
It kept calling me back, and what I realized was the block I had was that everyone else was using clay they were forcing the clay to do things that it doesn't naturally do. So it was like they all wanted me to make bowls, or really simple, plain things, and I wanted to do all this crazy stuff. So once I started just allowing myself to do all this crazy stuff, and I changed teachers and had a teacher that supported me in that, like everything changed.
In what way was it? Did you feel like you had a different kind of freedom with it that you didn't have before?
I did. Yeah. I felt like, you know how when you have that feeling, you just know, like I knew that the rest of my life I would be working with clay.
What would you say that inspires your work most?
Well, color. I'm really into beautiful colors, and also organic soft plants, like succulents. Yeah. I love this. I love how they feel because they're so soft and feminine, really. And when you don't force clay into a shape, it kind of automatically makes those soft, feminine shapes like succulents. So I've gotten where I'm trying to surround myself with as many succulents as possible. In fact, the house I'm staying in right now has a whole garden of succulents right outside my door, and I find it incredibly inspiring.
It's so interesting. I just I listen to, as you might imagine, tons of podcasts, and I just listened to the Smart Passive Income podcast the other day, and the guest that the host Pat Flynn had on there, she has a website or a blog called Succulents and Sunshine. So it's interesting that succulents have been coming up lately. Maybe I need to go buy some succulents.
Yeah,
yeah.
But they have some. Yeah, they're so feminine, and there's such feminine revolution going on right now. I think I don't know, that's how I feel.
Interesting. So how does it play into your work then? Is it the color? Is it, as you said, the femininity, the softness, the combination? Well,
the femininity was totally by accident. For me, it's all good art is about, it's about how you feel when you make it. And so for me, what feels really right is working with the materials, like learning what the material wants to do naturally, and then just letting it do that. And so that's what I started doing with clay. I started, rolling it out and then hanging it on a mold and just letting it fall and letting it dry that way. And so when I would take the mold out and, flip it over, it would actually look like a succulent. People would say that it looked alive. So yeah, it's just letting it do what it wants to do, and then just celebrating color, because nature has so many beautiful colors. So I think I'm a big proponent of surrounding ourselves with colors we love.
Yeah. Now, speaking of surrounding ourselves, one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you, other than your beautiful artwork, is because I know one of the things that you do is help women entrepreneurs, especially, design their own spaces. So what would you say are 3 of your tips for ways that we can design our spaces in a way that really matches either our personality or our work vibe or whatever it needs to match for us to feel good in our own space?
I love this question. But so here's what I have, and then I'll kind of add on to it, is that I have, the first one is to take your workspace seriously. Because I've been exposed to a ton of female entrepreneurs in the last couple of years, and I realize there's this hesitancy within them to taking being an entrepreneur seriously. And so I really believe that step 1 is just having a designated space that is like your space for the business, and it is not a space for anything else. And it doesn't necessarily need to be like a traditional office. I like to work on a couch. So in my old studio space, the place where I would, do my computer work had, there was a designated space for that. The second one is, and this is actually my favorite, because this you can apply even if you can't find a designated workspace, which is really pay attention to what is in your line of vision. Because what we see and things we don't even notice, we're still taking them in subconsciously. So for instance, kind of on the negative side, if you have an office home office and you have the door open and the door is looking to the kitchen, then it's just going to remind you of all the things that you have to do in the kitchen.
Oh, now what if you're looking at a wall?
So I have so much I can say about this. If you're looking at a wall, I advise people to hang art that feels like you want your business to feel.
What would be an example of that? That's great advice. I love that. Instead of to-do lists, as I have. to-do lists and some vision things, but it's sort of, like you said, that constant reminder of these are the things or these are the goals and that kind of thing.
I would say, well, first of all, I think people should write down like what they want their business to feel like, both on a personal level and a professional level, because I believe in alignment. So I'm big into flow. Are you familiar with flow?
Yes. But tell us what you mean, just so everyone knows what you mean specifically.
So flow is when everything in your life is in alignment. Like your values and your belief systems are also reflected in your business and in your personal life. And when you are in, quote, flow, things happen so easily. Things that you want to happen in your life just kind of invite themselves into your world. And it's essentially because you've removed the blocks. You've removed mental blocks and sometimes physical blocks from the good things entering into your life. And so I believe that when you surround yourself visually with things that reflect back to you the values you want to see in your life, and when I say values, I mean the way you want to feel in your life, then you are increasing the ability of your life to have flow. Mm-hmm. So I can speak to myself, like I feel a lot better. And I've experimented with this too to see if it's true, and it's so true, is when I surround myself with colorful prints, like abstract prints, like that's what really calls my soul.
So it doesn't have to be something specific, like I want my business to be this huge company, so you have a picture of a huge building. It doesn't have to be that literal, in other words. It really is a feeling.
Well, it is for the artwork. So actually my third point was to make sure that you give yourself enough space to work. Mm-hmm. Because if you feel cramped in the space that you're working in, like physically cramped, then you're gonna mentally feel cramped, because our bodies and our minds are so connected. Like it's like a cycle. So I think that having a good sized desk can give you that mindset that your business can grow. Like, always give yourself more physical space. Like, don't clutter it up.
Right. Now, for someone like you who mentioned that you feel most comfortable working on your couch, what kind of things? Is it really about comfort? It doesn't have to be even at a desk.
Yeah, for me, it's about comfort, and it's about having a table to my right that has enough space that I could fit all the things that I want on it. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's about having floor space. So I'm looking out on a large floor space. And then in my last house, I made it so where I was sitting when I worked from home was looking out a window.
Right.
I was looking directly out a window, and then to the right, I had a large, abstract painting that a friend had done that I just loved. And then another abstract print, like to the catty corner. Like, I made sure to surround myself with beautiful art, because that's what inspires my business.
So for everyone to have sort of surrounding yourself with beautiful things or things that are meaningful to you, that make you feel good, having that in your space, as opposed to just the tools of whatever trade you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's two different things. There's the physical side, making sure that you have like the right printer and enough space. But then there's the mental side. Like, does your space, does it support you on an emotional side? So I would stay away from generic prints, if they mean nothing to you, mm-hmm. and go for something that like you see and you just go, wow, I love that, Yeah.
How do we know if something is in our space is sort of cramping our style? How do we is there a way, I should say, to sort of take an assessment of that on our own?
If something's kind of cramping yourself, I mean, I think it's a gut reaction. Like, I think you kind of know, mm-hmm. but I have a few, but one tool I have is that I recommend that people write down everything that they want from their business, like in the next year. And then in the column next to that, they write down what physical items do they need to accomplish that. So like a computer or a filing cabinet, that sort of thing. And to really evaluate if they truly, if they're going to have that with them in a year. So, there's a lot of kind of old, particularly entrepreneurs that are in their 40s, because I'm 40, so I understand this. I lived in the age when everyone had to have a filing cabinet. Like that was just kind of how you worked.
That's when you knew you were about business.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
But I don't think that's necessarily true anymore.
Right.
So really think about like where your business is going to be in a year, like where do you want it to go, and then translate that into like physical things, and write it down. Like what do you need, and then you can observe, what you have in your office that is not that, and take it out of the office, and see how it feels.
See how it feels, and knowing, would you say too that things may change with different seasons of either actual seasons or seasons of your business, seasons of your life, as far as the things that you want around you or the things that'll support you in your environment?
Yeah, I think that's true. What would you say as an example of that?
I don't know. I'm thinking of, one, it's maybe certain colors resonate with you more during a certain season, as I said, either of your life or because, for example, right now, one of my colors is sort of like the sienna orange color I'm attracted to right now. And I remember a couple of years ago, it was sort of that, what do they call it? Cerulean, I guess it's called, like that limey green kind of color. So sometimes different times of my life I'm just attracted to, for I don't know what reason, different colors. So it might be either a color or a certain image or anything else that people can think about that they're drawn to that might be, supporting them in their space or making them feel good within their space.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's true for people's homes too. So I'm a big proponent of rotating your art. Yeah, because there's things that you love. Like I have a portrait of my great-great-grandmother, which I love, but I was in the middle of this past 6 months. I've been in the middle of figuring out where I wanted to live next. And I realized that it was holding me back because it was keeping me in the South.
And by holding you back, you mean just having it hanging in whatever space you had it in?
Just having it hanging in my living room. Every time I would look at it, I would feel this obligation to stay in the South because my family is like this really old Southern family. So I apologized to her and put her in the closet.
Oh no!
Yeah, I did. And when I did that, I quickly realized that I actually wanted to move to San Francisco.
Is that where you are now?
I am. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
What'd you say? You just moved recently?
I just moved last week.
Last week? Maggie, oh my goodness. That's huge. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
I love that. And I love to thank you for sharing that story. I'm sorry Grandma's in the closet.
That's right. She'll come back.
She'll come back. No, but I think that's such a good point too of thinking of whether it's a picture or anything, you just have to be sort of aware of or take into consideration what might be the thing that you're not even thinking of that's sort of holding you in that space, whether it's mentally or in your case, physically holding you in that space.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, how do you work with your clients in helping them determine some of these things? Because I know you work with different, as we mentioned, women entrepreneurs and helping them clear up their space or recreate their space. How do you work with your clients?
Well, what I do is I don't work with them directly. I make recommendations on. I actually design entire rooms for them. And because, women are so busy. So I design rooms that are around a certain feeling. And then they can pick and choose like which furniture and artwork that they would like. So it's kind of, so these little individual rooms. But what I do is I really encourage them. I actually have a worksheet that kind of answers your question, which is, it's called how to make your room fabulously you.
Nice. Where can we? Is there a link to that I can link so people listening can go to your show notes page and find it? Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll send it to you. Me. Oh, great.
Yeah. And so the little worksheet is essentially, it's very simple. It's about evaluating how you feel in a room. and how you want to feel in the room. And so once you know how you want to feel in specific rooms, then it's so much easier to make a decision about what you're going to put in that room. Because then you because a lot of the pitfalls that people fall into when they're decorating their home office or any room in their house is, wanting to please others and and feeling like they have that it needs to look like it does in a magazine. Mm-hmm. And that might not be in alignment with what they want. So once you know what you want, then, things are so much easier.
Excellent. I love that. I can't wait to see the worksheet. That's exactly what I was looking for, helping us figure out how do we make those decisions. So that's great. I'll get that from you.
Cool. Yeah.
Excellent. So what would you say your support network looks like? We talked about space, but just in general, what's your support network look like?
Well, my support network is actually in transition right now. Because I'm going through a huge mental shift in my business. But 2 months ago, and I'll go into that, but first I have to point out that 2 months ago I got my first business coach, and it has been so transformative.
In what way?
She has helped me see my blocks. She's the reason that I'm on podcasts now. I had this huge block about it, and then I started with her prompting. After she had helped me work through the block, it was like easy peasy. I had a pitch. I started contacting people, and it's been amazing. It's been amazing. And so, but also she's kind of made me realize some truths about myself too, some positive truths and some of my, pitfalls I have as an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. So I kind of, I really think an important part of being an entrepreneur is knowing yourself really well. So yeah.
And sometimes it takes, to your point, getting help in order to do that. So someone can help you point out those things that might be blind spots for you. And we all have them.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm in this transition because I just moved from North Carolina, and my support system there was very much like artist community and family members. But they really supported me in kind of the traditional ways that artists make money, which are shows and galleries and, commissions and that sort of thing. But the art world's changing, but two, I have a bigger vision because I want to reach more people. And I want to help more people, and I want to help them see the bigger picture, essentially what we're talking about. And so that's why I moved to San Francisco. So I'm in the middle of reconnecting with a bunch of old colleagues and trying to network with like-minded people, so that I can kind of build a network that matches, this new vision, this vision I have for my business.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I think if you don't mind, do you mind sharing what your vision is with us? And then also just the importance of, I think you sort of spoken to it, but the importance of getting in an environment, just like we mentioned with your room or your space, an environment with the people who are around you too might need to change in order for you to move in a certain direction or feel a certain way. But what's your vision, some of your vision for your business now?
So my vision is to help as many, to help as many people as possible, particularly women entrepreneurs, and women in general, to kind of get over their blocks in decorating, so that they can have surroundings that support them to be bold, inspired women. I want them to have surroundings that really support kind of there's this revolution happening with women right now. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting. It's almost getting even more attention now because it's become a counterculture almost with our politics right now. And it's so exciting. And I really want us to be that. There's so many layers to that. I think that's why personal growth has become so important. I want to be that layer that helps them to make their surroundings be in alignment with this new revolution. So I want to help them surround them with, colors and feminine artwork and furniture that is like sleek and cosmopolitan and, you know, bold. So yeah, and I want to kind of help them see that how their surroundings help, you know, affect that. And I'm researching a book on that right now. So I you know, I want to try to give them as many tools as possible to accomplish that.
I love it. That sounds like a wonderful vision. Put it out there.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait.
That's great. Have you found that, well, I know you've only been there a week, but do you feel, I should say, that the change as far as moving has been good for you now that you've told us about your vision for the things that you want to do? Do you feel like it was the right move so far?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I drove across country
Nice.
which was amazing. And the whole time I knew it was scary, but I knew I was making the right decision. And when I arrived here, I knew I had made the right decision. And yesterday I went into the city. I'm staying outside the city.
Mm-hmm.
And I took the ferry back to where I'm staying, and I was on the ferry ride, and I was just thinking, I feel so in alignment with who I am right now. And I know that the people who are in alignment with me too are going to just fall into place. And it's kind of been like that because I contacted a bunch of people through LinkedIn that I, you know, had either used to work with or kind of tangentially knew. And I was surprised by how many people were in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So I have people that I know here and who want to help me. So, you know, I can feel it. And then yesterday I found Emerging Women has these power circles. It's essentially like an in-person mastermind, and mm-hmm. I'm seriously considering signing up for that. So
excellent.
Yeah, and they have one here. So
Emerging Women, is that an organization?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure I link to that. Excellent. Let's take a quick break to thank our sponsor. So as a solopreneur, the last thing you want to worry about is getting paid and tracking people down for payment. So I was so excited to talk to Acuity Scheduling customer happiness specialist, Kristen Barber, who told me about Acuity's payment options for working with clients. This was something that I didn't know Acuity had, even though I've been working with the company for a year. So Kristen explains to us the easy ways that you can use the different payment options so you can get paid and focus on handling your business.
So depending on what your needs are, we've got a few different ways to go. We've got 5 different payment processors, and 3 of them have a lot of flexibility that kind of give you a wide range of options. So you can either have your clients pay upfront 100% of the price, end of story. You can have them pay a deposit, either a percentage or a dollar amount of what the appointment cost is. You can also, for 3 of the 5 processors, just have them enter in a valid credit card, but not charge them right off the bat. So those are really easy ways to kind of just cover your bases and make sure that you're not going to be out any money. You can set up cancellation policies, but it's just a really nice way to kind of get that extra security measure in there and to avoid those awkward conversations about whether or not Nancy owes you that money. You can just take care of it without even talking to her. You're good to go. As entrepreneurs and as business owners, obviously getting paid is super important. So if we can kind of take all of that off of your shoulders, then A, you're getting paid, which is what you deserve. And B, it kind of also adds another professional element to your site where you don't need to call, you don't need to send them anything. You're not waiting on them to get it together. You can just take care of business and it all just works really smoothly.
I love it and I can't wait to try it. Now, because you're a Support is Sexy listener, Acuity Scheduling is offering you 45 days free on any plan. So you'll also have a chance to try those payment options. Go to acuityscheduling.com/sexy to sign up for your 45 days for free. That's ACUITY scheduling.com/sexy.
We'll be keeping an eye out for you sexy ladies.
And now, back to the show. So what would you say, Maggie, entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
I would say that, first of all, I love this question. But I would say that it's taught me that I can be soft and still successful. Because I think being an entrepreneur in the culture that we have now allows women to be who they really are. And in fact, I found that the more I tap into my feminine energy, the more in flow I feel. And, my most feminine work has actually been my most popular. Because I had a corporate type job for a long, for 10 plus years. And, I used to make people cry.
In your corporate job? Well, we didn't hear about that.
Yeah. I mean, I used to manage projects. I used to manage the design of economic and democratic reform projects in developing countries.
Was this right after school, before you traveled?
It was about 4 years after. Well, actually, I went into it right after graduate school. So it would have been about 3 years after undergraduate.
Now, why were you making people cry, even if it was unintentional? Was it because of the kind of feedback that you had to give, or what happened?
Well, I think that I was under so much pressure. I mean, we had such intense deadlines, and we had to come up with such complicated designs. And I cared. I cared a lot, because these are things that have made tremendous. Now that the projects have run their course, have made tremendous impact on people's lives, and so when people wouldn't do what I needed them to do, I would get really upset. And yeah, I mean that's essentially. I didn't make a lot of people cry, but there were definitely people who were scared of me, wow. And that's really who I am.
It is really who you are. You said it isn't.
It's not who I am at all. Like. In fact, I've taken a personality test, and I found that that's who I am in moments of stress. That was really interesting. But yeah, I found in my corporate job I was super competitive and demanding, and I kind of did that because I adopted the masculine. How men communicate with each other in the workplace. Because I was trying to kind of communicate with them on a level that they can understand. Yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, as you mentioned, do you feel like you've been able to sort of settle into your feminine energy, as they say, and be able to explore that more?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel so much more comfortable with myself. And I feel like my life is going to be my own from now on.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Excellent. So in closing, Maggie, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Oh, gosh. I guess it would be my mom. I mean, we do not have a perfect relationship. At all. But because of her 0 to 60 in 1 second way of living, it really has pushed me to think of the world in a very excelled way. Like I'm not okay to just sit around. Like I really want to see, what's next and what could be better. And it's made me very passionate. And I'm not very good at compromise if it doesn't match who I want to be as a person. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what would you say to your mom?
I'd say, I didn't really like it at the time, but thank you for pushing me.
That's always a thing, right? We didn't like it at the time, or I just said we all have most of us have that sort of push and pull relationship with mom.
Yeah.
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 Excellent. So now tell us how we can support you. I'll have links, of course, to everything, but for those listening, your website, social media, or anything else that you want us to know about.
Sure. Yeah, I would. This is particularly for women who are looking for wanting their rooms to align with who they are and their home offices. Subscribe to my weekly room design digest. Because each week I send out a list of my newest design room designs, and then insight into how having a great great room design can impact you on a mental level. So it's not just like furniture and art. It's also like little lessons about how to think about your surroundings. And then for those who are kind of looking for a more inspired, unconventional life and want to travel more, I would say, read my book.
And I'll make sure I have links to that too.
Okay.
The Adventures of a Curious Sculptor, a memoir.
Yes.
Excellent. Now, have you ever thought about, I'm just curious, have you thought about putting, and maybe you might already have this in the works with your coach, but putting some of your content into a course or even a webinar that leads people into being able to utilize your services? And I ask that because I do think, well, speaking for me, just from personal experience, some of the tips that you shared in here and that you mentioned are in your worksheet are things that I would want to know about creating a certain kind of space. And then if it were something that led me into, how to work with you in a bigger way, I think it could be, not to put something else on your plate, but something to think about. I think you have all of the content there that would make for a great, either a short course, mini course, or, something that you walk people through in a webinar or some kind of, since you're getting more out there to tell people, your expertise and what you're up to. Because it's a great niche, for a lack of a better word, but it's something that we all think about, but even if just subconsciously, but until you say things like what I should do if I'm facing a wall or looking out the window or having things, around me that aren't necessarily art and just things in my space, there's all kinds of tips and advice there. I know you didn't ask for this feedback, but I'm just saying.
No, I love it because I'm writing, I'm doing the research for a book on this, and I love that you said I should, do a course, because I think I will.
Yeah. And maybe the course could be a part of the book, or when you're ready to launch the book, the course could be the lead into the book. It's all kind of ways in online media we can work it out together, or make it work, together. But I just think you have so much great possibility with the content that you're focused on and sharing. And then you have artwork and you're an artist, so it's not just from no disrespect to interior designers, but it's not just from that perspective of what looks good. You're actually a creative as well.
Yes. Thank you.
That's my 2 cents, Maggie.
No, it's wonderful. Thank you.
Of course. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you sharing all of the great tips and advice that you shared with us. But before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
I guess I would just reiterate what I talked about throughout the whole throughout the podcast, which is, to really encourage, people, women in particular, to evaluate how your workspace and your home, supports your business, and to separate that out into a physical way, which is, I think, is what most things, kind of websites, and do now, but to also think about how it supports you mentally, and just, a little. I'm going to plant that little seed, and then just think of your home and your office space as a place that should inspire you.
That should inspire you. Excellent, Maggie. Thank you so much. Hold on for just a second.
Okay.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Maggie. Let's hope that she creates those courses. I'll make sure I keep you posted. In the meantime, to get in touch with her, to find out more about her book and her art, all the great things that she's up to, go to supportissexypodcast.com and just search Maggie, Maggie, and her show notes page will pop up with all of the links and resources, ways to get in touch with her, and a way to get that worksheet that she talked about. It looks great. Support is Sexy, podcast.com, search Maggie, Maggie. Thank you so much for listening. You know, I appreciate you being here. And look, if you are in the space where you are reinventing your brand, or maybe you're writing or rewriting your bio, coming up with your brand story, and you need some support, you can go to brandstory.tips. Again, that's brandstory.tips to get my free course on creating your brand story. Again, you can check that out at brandstory.tips. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. And until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.